41 Gambler. There is another paragraph, also written 10 years ago, to Khan, on how to disarm Pakistan. I found that when Singh was the president of the National Defense University, his speech was always very revealing and nuanced. Dangerous. Lin Huaisheng continued. If the war is confined to one area, it will be very unfavorable to India. When I served in the 19th Armored Regiment, I knew the importance of military deployment. Should not only attack from a narrow front, then the enemy will hold the key and slowly kill our soldiers. This way of war is undoubtedly the nightmare of the army. Based on the conservative army staff, Pakistan was able to deploy nuclear weapons in Ganganago 250 kilometers to the west of Seoul. As far as I know, this is the maximum range of their backward nuclear projection capabilities, and there is nothing we can do about such a provocation. The threat. Obviously, Singh will not choose the previous style of play. He worships Clausewitz and Napoleon, and will never let the rugged mountain roads of Kashmir become Pakistan's most powerful ally against India. You just guessing his future actions based on some old letters from 10 years ago. Not exactly these letters. I have studied his character for about a few years, since he was still an idle worker in the Ministry of Defense. There is a saying in China. As the old saying goes, it is difficult to change the nature of the country, so I predict that he will have a bold ground attack plan within the next 2 months. How is this possible? There will be signs of such a big action. Yes, there will be signs, and I can tell you the most obvious of all signs, that he will remove Aspard from his post and replace him with a man completely under his control who will control the army. Next, the noisy discussion started again, and the atmosphere was extremely lively. Who is willing to bet with me on this matter? Lin Huaisheng said with a smile, as if he had a plan. There was a low-pitched and restrained laughter from the audience immediately. No one wanted to make this bet, but everyone wrote down the lieutenant colonel's words. For most of the people sitting here, they were just borrowing this. I had the opportunity to learn about the geographical mountains and rivers of this area, the deployment of the army, etc. I didn't expect that the lieutenant colonel would go off the mark and make an amazing prediction of India's major policies. All of this was within Lin Huaisheng's plan, and this unequivocal judgment was not made by his whim in class. For several years, Lin Huaisheng had been walking around southern Tibet, and he had a plan to solve the problem in his stomach, but he didn't even tell his teacher Su Jingji about this plan. Lin Huaisheng is a confident and introverted person, and he acts quite self-aware. He knows that it is not easy to get the real superior to accept his point of view. In today's retreat discussion, the opportunity for him to speak is actually fake, and no one will really ask him for advice on strategies. He knows this better than anyone else. Lin Huaisheng did not follow the teacher's intention to properly add personal opinions in the last part of the explanation, but left a memorable button one by one. He knew that the war would continue, and that developments would confirm his judgment. It wouldn't be long, maybe in a few weeks or even days. Comrade Lieutenant Colonel, if everything goes as you expected, how many troops do you think India will transfer from southern Tibet? The colonel in the front row continued to ask questions. That's a good question, but before I answer it, I have to tell you what kind of person Singh is. I have some information here. This is 1996, as a representative of the Army's armored forces, he inspected Ukrainian tanks. Factory records in a casino in Odessa. According to records, he lost $43,000 in one day. Is this a factory kickback? Laughing from below. No, Singh's family is very rich, his personal morals are good, and he has no record of receiving kickbacks, which is very rare in the Indian military. However, what I want to say is that he is actually a gambler. A gambler apprentice. Yes, although he later stayed away from the casino under the guidance of his spiritual mentor, Kahan, the essence of a person is still a gambler. This is not easy to change. Lin Huaisheng said, he took a detour. Circle, seems to be beginning to answer the colonel's question. I also know his record when he was a company commander in Bangladesh. The longest distance breakthrough record of the Indian Armored Force was completed by him, but in this battle, he lost 80% of his combat effectiveness. The colonel did not continue. Interjecting, Lin Huaishen nodded seriously when he saw him. So, if his ground troops get into a tough fight in Pakistan, from what I know about him, he won't just transfer 1 or 2 divisions from the Eastern Military Region. I believe he will put all the money on it. The audience was quiet again, and after Lin Huaishen's presentation about the character of the gambler, his final conclusion did not seem so open-hearted. Of course, everyone knows that if Aspard continues to serve as the Army Chief of Staff, such a situation is impossible, and everything must depend on whether the Lieutenant Colonel's prediction can come true. Okay, stop talking. Now I'll talk about the impact of the terrain of southern Tibet on India's deployment. You can see that the Brahmaputra divides this area into 2 parts, which is true for us, and roughly the same for India. Lin Huaishen ended the part about Singer's behavior analysis and returned to the terrain part, which is what he should say when he is standing here today. But for him, what he really wants to say is that he has already said it secretly, and the rest are insignificant, and read according to the manuscript. Every participant has a copy that is exactly the same as what he read. Take a look. That's it. Thousands of miles away, at the base in Peshawar, Pakistan, everyone was waiting for news from Hassan, who had disappeared from radar for a long time, and communications had been completely cut off. Now, the Sabawaks has flown to the designated position. It can see that the 4 Indian Su-30 fighter jets have not used the huge amount of fuel to continue to stay at the border. They have already returned to the east. From the heading analysis, they may return to New Delhi or Bareilly Airport. A fast-moving blip suddenly appeared on the radar, flying in the opposite direction. Captain Falcon, is that you? The F-16C's radio has been connected, but there is no echo, but the pilot's violent breathing can be heard. He seemed to be breathing desperately to keep himself awake. Captain Hassan, is that you? It's me, thank God, Hassan said, trembling. Behind Major General Islam, a few people clapped their hands sparsely, probably wanting to celebrate that this devastating blow did not cause the entire army to be wiped out. But the Major General himself sat there like a stone statue, motionless. How is Rashid? Hassan asked. He didn't parachute, and the wreckage fell on the west side of the glacier. The headquarters fell into silence. After India started the full-scale war, the first counterattack planned by the Air Force turned out to be like this, losing 2 valuable advanced fighter jets. The loss of this may not be a big deal for the Indian Air Force with thousands of aircraft, but it is undoubtedly a nightmare for Pakistan, which is exhausted, and this is the most terrifying battle for this Air Force in 40 years.